How come that so many of the older FPS games are better than newer titles? What was it that made us enjoy some of the iconic games back in the 90s and also during the golden era of gaming, which took place around the mid of 2000? Well, hi, this is Splish, and today I wanted to talk about why it seems to be so many new FPS games being released recently that aren't good and fun enough to play, or simply doesn't make it. In the background, by the way, you see some iconic Dirty Bomb gameplay, which is one of the older FPS titles and games that I still play once in a while also in 2023. The reason why I'm making this video and why I'm asking this question that many have done before me also is simply because I've had a really hard time recent years to find an FPS game, or games for that sake, that I want to continue to play. If we look back just a few years ago, some of the bigger AAA titles that I used to enjoy playing has both disappointed me and other players. I'm thinking about major titles such as Call of Duty, Battlefield, and also Halo. What they all have in common now is that the games has gone into design choices and directions that many of their followers don't like or appreciate. And not to mention technical and performance issues as well, since so many newer games for years now has been released in a kind of half-ready state, and they sometimes don't improve that much later down the line either. Add to that microtransaction systems and other in-game ways to increase the bigger company's income, and you realize early on that the absolute strongest incentive to make games nowadays is the money and not the actual vision of a good game and the joy of bringing that out to the players. When I look at the stream charts, when it comes to most played FPS games, Counter-Strike Global Offensive is still number one with a huge lead before Apex Legends on second, followed by PUBG and Team Fortress 2. CSGO was released in 2012, now being 11 years old. Apex Legends, which is still fairly new compared to the others, was released in 2019, about 4 years ago. PUBG was released in 2017, which means it's about 6 years ago, and Team Fortress 2 was released in 2007. Well, that's about 16 years ago. So the most played FPS games on Steam are everything between 16 and 4 years old. That's kind of interesting to see. You'll find Warzone 2 on position 8, Battlefield 2042 on 27, Halo Infinite on 57th place, just to compare with the franchises I was talking about initially and their newest titles. So what does this mean? Well, for me it kind of proves what I've already felt for quite some time, that FPS gaming isn't in a very good state right now and hasn't been so for years. There's of course an increased competition out there to take into consideration, and some would say that the market is saturated, also making it harder for smaller companies, indie studios and titles to get enough attention, even though they manage to make a good game. I've seen some examples of that through the years as well. But what makes then a good FPS game or game overall, besides good gunplay and good maps, etc.? If you look once again on the Steam list, some of the older games gave the possibility for players to use mods. By doing so, the developers are letting the players into their territorium partly, which gives the players a feeling of being a part of the game, something that strengthens the bond to that particular game and also increases the chances for the game and their communities to get a much longer lifespan. You might say player value. This is such a win-win situation in my book, something that, for example, Valve realized early on by implementing these features into Team Fortress 2 and the Left 4 Dead series, just to give an example. Since I mentioned Halo earlier, it might be fair to say that Halo Forge has been a similar success, at least when it comes to the former Bungie Halo games. But some publishers doesn't seem to care about these kind of features, or doesn't care if the game does well for the next 5-6 years to come. Instead, they release a new game every year, no matter what, with the incentive to make as much money as possible in the shortest period of time, even if the game has flaws or isn't that good at all. I'm of course mainly thinking about Activision and Call of Duty. It seems as if quantity over quality is their motto nowadays. So when parts of the Call of Duty community tries to take initiative in their own hands, making a Call of Duty game that they know people have been longing for, then they end up getting a letter of cease and desist on behalf of Activision, forcing them to end what they have been doing now for years. I'm of course thinking about the SM2 project, alongside with Plutonian servers that X Labs has provided us with. giving us a safe alternative to play older Call of Duty games such as Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, BO2, and also lately Black Ops 3, something I covered recently in another video on my channel. Due to this letter of cease and desist, X-Lab's project are now forced to comply with this order, and they are therefore shutting down all operations permanently, including Black Ops 3, and that's sad, but it's true. Sure, Activision has the legal right to do so, and the creators of SM2, props to them by the way, should most likely have been more aware of the fact that it could happen, especially after they changed the SM2 project's Modern Warfare 2 engine into the Modern Warfare Remastered engine instead, if I got this right. A kind of bold move, since that engine is still being used, if I got it right. I know this is a bit of a sidetrack, but it shows once again that players aren't pleased with the recent development regarding modern FPS games, and Call of Duty is definitely not the only franchise or in games that are suffering from this. When I go back and look at games I used to play and compare them with newer games, it's easy to get nostalgic, of course, when judging whether they were better than today's FPS games, since I also was in a different place in life at that time, and I guess that goes for you as well. However, when I go back about 15 years or more, as mentioned earlier, into the golden era of gaming, I find FPS titles like Call of Duty 2, Medal of Honor Pacific Assault, Fear, Half-Life 2, Unreal Tournament, Far Cry, Counter-Strike Source, Doom 3, Metal Gear Solid 3, Ghost Recon 2, Quake 4, and the list goes on. In 2006 and 2007, more classics are added, such as Half-Life 1, Rainbow Six, Vegas, Prey, Tomb Raider Legend, Hitman Blood Money, Battlefield 2142, Fear, Extraction Point, Just Cause, and more. And in 2008, games such as Crisis Warhead, Stalker Clear Sky, Fallout 3, Far Cry 2, Call of Duty World at War, as mentioned earlier, and Left 4 Dead was released. Of course, there's more games in this list as well, and some of them I mentioned now aren't maybe FPS games per definition, but I thought they had to be mentioned in order to kind of prove my point. I can understand that this might be a bit hard to grasp or even understand, especially if you're younger and you therefore weren't able to play some of these games at their prime. I'm mainly thinking about the multiplayer aspect now, but some of them, for example World at War, still has quite a few players, at least on PC, also thanks to some modded stuff, so that's one game to look back into. Not to mention the awesome single player that you just have to play, especially if you are a Call of Duty gamer. As a matter of fact, many of the titles I'm mentioning are still worth going back to in order to play the campaigns, since many of them are really good. And since they're old, you also might get a good price if you're considering to buy them now. Because let's be honest, can you put together a list of high quality FPS games, especially multiplayers, that was released during the last 4 to 5 years that you believe are truly great games? I personally have a quite hard time to do that, although I believe that some of you guys would most likely list some of the more popular Battle Royale games out there on such a list. So was FPS gaming better back in the days? Hell yeah, I believe so, and if you go back and play a few of the titles I mentioned in this video, I do believe that you'll discover that it's true. Sure, development has moved forward when it comes to graphics, meaning visuals, audio, and other technical aspects of a game that might be appealing at a first glance. But I'm talking about the core of the game, the soul of the game that engages you to play and play more again, getting lost into its single-player campaign, or maybe spend hours after hours into a well-designed and addictive multiplayer experience. I hope for the future that we will still be able to see some grain of gold coming up once in a while when it comes to newer FPS titles. Otherwise, I'll either be stuck playing games such as Dirty Bomb or PlanetSide 2, which isn't that bad, I mean it's good games, don't get me wrong, or maybe also enjoy some of the newer horror games that have recently been released and are doing well from what I can see. I'm thinking about, for example, Outlast Trials and also the upcoming Amnesia game. Well, fingers crossed that they are good. We'll see. With that said, thanks for watching and feel free to join in the discussion in the comments if you feel like it. All the best to you guys and have a great day. Cheers.